This is a clouds weather alert.
Good late Monday, early Tuesday. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, coming on the air because we are tracking a potential tropical cyclone that's expected to become a hurricane, maybe even a major hurricane, and impact our area maybe severely there on that Thursday. It's going to have a pretty big impact. It just really depends on the ultimate track and the strength on just if it's like a historic situation or still just something that is a pretty big deal overall. So we got to really pay attention to this. You can see here the convection. We don't have an organized system yet, which is a little bit of good news in that it hasn't already got a name or something like that here, where once it starts to really organize, they can do so very quickly and strengthen very quickly. We saw that in the Pacific. You see another system, if you look there just above the logo there, that has a 3 icon. That's because we had a system go from something that wasn't even named to a major hurricane in about 24 hours there in the northeastern Pacific, and not just getting to that Cat 3, but making landfall at that strength as well. So it can definitely happen here in the Atlantic too. So we just have to be really careful. I know it's not to the exact level, but a little reminiscent of Otis there last year in the Pacific, where really got very strong very quickly, becoming a Cat 5. So I know the expectation had to be raised on that pretty quickly. And I know sometimes one storm can impact the other a little here. So we'll see if we have some type of, action here in terms of maybe just the overall environment here starts to really take off with this as we look ahead into toward the timeline, because that's what the models are expecting to happen. So the atmosphere can be a tricky thing sometimes, and you can have storms really evolve very quickly here. So you can see our track right now, and you might be wondering, what are the red circles for, the yellow circles? Well, I know in that red circled area, that's where, as you're looking toward Florida, that's where our greatest concern really currently lies, but that could always change. We'll see the official cone of concern in a moment. This is the official wind field forecast here, and that really shows you where hurricane gusts are a distinct possibility right now in that red circled area. In fact, I'll go ahead and take the infrared satellite off, zoom in a little bit more so you can see the counties here with this, and this, can sift around, and there'll be more areas added into this here as we look ahead and the like. But you can see here that red area there right now indicating we could have gust to hurricane force, and that could be all the way to Stark and Gainesville. But even more severe winds expected closer toward the center, wherever that is. And now this could be a bigger storm than some of them we've seen lately, based on the model guidance. So that can have an impact on not just the areas that get the strongest wind, even further away from the center, being stronger, but also the storm surge here too. So got to be really cognizant here of what's going on. This is the timeline here, that too, over Jefferson County plotted at 8 p.m. on that Thursday there, the 26th. So we're talking less than 72 hours here from this already being over land and the impact. So really get going there on Thursday pretty early. I mean, even, later Wednesday, we could have some outer squalls here starting to be a concern, especially downstate, but even further upstate, maybe an isolated tornado not even out of the question here as we look ahead. Probably more that earlier Thursday versus later Wednesday upstate, but we shall see. Just got to really be prepared for this. This could be a very serious situation. Some of the hurricane guidance here in terms of the intensity forecast have been as aggressive as I've ever seen here, really, and that some of them have been trying to forecast this maybe getting all the way to a Cat 4 or stronger here, which is a very serious, a Category 4 hurricane or stronger. So we got to be really aware of this here and very, vigilant here of what could happen, as this could be a very serious scenario. We just have to be really paying attention here. I know this red circle area also could be, about the area when they do it, and this could shift some of the GFS model has shifted a little east, so that could increase our threat for areas like Stark, Lake City, Gainesville, and even Live Oak, depending on how this kind of shifts around with some of the worst of this. Might be a slightly weaker, but still very, very significant system if it were to shift a little east. But this red circle area could indicate about where the hurricane center, about a hurricane watch here, give or take a few counties. This is just a general idea here. So you just gotta really be aware, because this is something that looks to really have the environment, the water temperature is very favorable, and the atmospheric characteristics seem very favorable for this to really get strong on us here. Hopefully it doesn't, do that, and we generally, don't have this much of a concern for a potential tropical cyclone. I hadn't even got a name yet, but expect it to become Helene and expect it to become a hurricane. We generally don't have that much confidence in going ahead and kind of pre-naming it. We're not really supposed to do that generally, because if another storm gets that name first, and it causes a lot of confusion. But we don't have a lot of time here to prepare. We need to get the message out that this could be a very serious deal. I mean, you see the 2 here, so that could happen, and a track further east would make it more likely to be a 2, something around there. But if it's further west, it would be able to have more time and also more space there in the Gulf of Mexico to be able to kind of organize there, and that might give it a better chance of being a 3 or a 4 as we get further off toward the west here. So you gotta kind of keep that in mind here. But Category 2 is still a very big deal as you're looking at things. I know Debbie didn't have as much time. It was only, but still impactful 1 at Landfall. Adalia was a 3, but it was weakening upon landfall. And depending on how this hits, if it hits like McCullough, Franklin, those areas don't really, as you look back in history, you really have a storm making landfall like, that in those areas as a major hurricane. And there's more room there in terms of the storm, the eastern side still over water to be able to strengthen better than if it's a little closer to the coast here. That's worse for areas further east and worse for Tampa Bay with storm surge, but it may not get quite as strong. So it's a give and take here. This is 8 p.m. on that Thursday, and now what I want to do here, so that's just one indication of what could happen now, and we're going to kind of go off of that. I kind of, on some of my forecast information you'll see in a few moments, I kind of base things off of maybe having it make landfall into word like Taylor County. This is pretty close here. Taylor County is where Perry is. This has it more good than right in Jefferson, but we just have to be really careful. No, Adalia was so serious, so devastating for those areas, Taylor, Dixie counties especially, and there's a chance we could have a repeat, but maybe even worse. Or if it makes landfall a little further east, then it's worse for other areas, further east, but also down the coast. But then the wind direction will be pushing the water out, so Perry might not get it. As we're looking there, with the wind is bad, and then right at the coast they might not get it. Really, with that storm surge bad at all. I mean, because if you had the wind pushing out here, and the direction of the storm hitting here makes a big difference too. As it approaches the coast, to see if water can still build up. But in general, you're not going to maximize your storm surge values here as you're looking at things. If this were to make landfall, further east, the areas further west would have the water ultimately going out. So that'd be good news actually for those areas, but not good news on the eastern side. So let me go ahead and take this kind of where we can get this together. I know we had the newest one at GFS come in. I know wanted to kind of look over that before we got on here to kind of make sure we have our message in here as consistent as possible. Again, it's a little bit further east here, and that'd be more of a concern for Lake City, Gainesville, Stark here. Still a big enough concern, but there's a chance with this based on some of that potential shift in east and some of the guidance that we could have a scenario here where we've gotten so lucky over the years in Stark with storms overall. I mean, Irma was pretty bad, but overall we haven't gotten near as bad of a storm type impact as we could have had, and there's a chance of this one our luck could run out. So we got to really be prepared here in this type of set of circumstances. So I just want to go ahead and pull up. It's going to be the American model here. So I'm going to start it off at 8 a.m. on that Thursday here, so you can kind of see what's going on with this. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I know we have our current plot from the Hurricane Center, but I want to see this scenario as well. So I know you can see the storm axis already coming in, but then the storm center is down here. And we'll just kind of try to watch this together here as I walk you through it. And I'll walk you through this potential. I'm going to put the wind arrows on here too, So this can kind of see how the storm surge might kind of stack up here. That could be really helpful for the viewers at home. I want to just kind of make sure we go over this scenario. I know at that point it looks like it's not too far off the forecast track, but it's going to start to kind of move off of track here a little bit as we look ahead. And that, we've seen it with so many storms over the years. Ian, Charlie, they can, wobble or shift track here at the last minute. And that is very problematic, and people are really caught off guard. So we gotta really be careful to the east. We gotta be careful to the west too, because you'd have slightly more time to prepare, but it could actually be a stronger storm if it goes maybe closer to Apalachicola, because it'd have a little more time over water, and it would not be impacted as much by land. So again, we're kind of scrubbing around here. You see the moisture that's even earlier on there, that Thursday morning, the 26th. As we're kind of looking at this here, looking at this scenario, looking at this potentially dangerous situation here with the overall threat here toward our area. So we just have to be very cognizant of that here. And just wanted to see the wind direction. So you see, I know the center's way away. I am going to take off once, and I'm going to leave the areas there with the numbers in the screen for you guys, but I do want to take off here. I do want to take off the wind radius forecast. So this is a little bit easier to see here as we look at things. So let me go ahead and kind of walk you through this. So this is going to be, I batted up just a little bit. I know, you see later on it's going to clear on out. That's great news here, folks, as we look later on. But I know our focus is earlier on. So let me go ahead. I know we have to do this on the fly, so it makes things kind of difficult sometimes. But let me go ahead and try to back things up here for you real quick. I know currently radar, not too big of a deal around here, and we could have some fog around, so be aware of that. But you still have time to prepare there on that Tuesday as we're looking at things with the overall scenario. So that's some good news, at least. And those current temperatures right now, since we might not really have time for much of this later in the week. I know mid-upper 70s around areas toward Tallahassee, Perry, into South Georgia, and the like. You see closer to around 80 around St. Augustine. I know after the storm it could still be pretty warm, so you got to make sure you're prepared for that aspect of things too. I know that air conditioning, you might want to turn it down a little ahead of the storm so that your house is a little bit cooler if you're without power for a while. You also want to keep in mind your refrigerator. You want to try to turn that down, the temperature on that down too, so you have a little bit longer with the food in that ahead of power loss potential. So just some important tips to kind of keep in mind there. So we're going to go ahead and put the model fill now, and the model overlay here on the screen. We'll take off the current radar, obviously, and then we'll go ahead and now see this. So we're going to try to walk you through this. I'm going to move this up just a little bit here so we can see more of our Georgia areas, and then try to keep a consistent view of this here. So this is going to be 8 a.m. there on Thursday, okay? That's kind of the indication of this, and then we'll kind of progress this. That's 11 a.m. You see the isobars, a hurricane, and then you see also we'll have to watch down toward the Tampa area to see exactly how the wind direction comes on in here in toward that area. That really, at that point, really has the water pushing maybe right into Tampa Bay. And we could have, even though it's off the coast and you don't have much, maybe as you get, toward like Lakeland on this track, with the wind is high, Tampa could really get it in a very serious way with that storm surge on a track like the GFS is showing, just a little bit east of the official track, which I know we have some storm surge watches further down the Florida coast, but I know around Tampa is where we got to really be careful. I know you see that's about 48 hours ahead, so 11 a.m. on that Tuesday here, maybe even 5 a.m. advisory. They might issue some of those as we look further on up there to the west coast of Florida, because that surge in Tampa, and that's an area that's about as vulnerable as it gets in the country. It's always in meteorology we look at the worst case scenarios, and that's one of them, was this terrible storm surge in Tampa. Now this isn't the worst case track here. They're all worst scenarios, and what this is showing right here in terms of strength potential and ultimate track potential, but we haven't had a situation like one where you just have this catastrophic surge coming in 103 years there, I believe it is, and there's so much growth there now. So if we ever had like a Cat 4, Cat 5 make landfall in Hernando County, let's say Pasco County, uh, as it's kind of parallel on the coast there, then you would just get that surge right up in toward the Tampa area. Very, very serious. Even if it hit Pinellas, Hillsborough, depending on how it kind of comes in here, they could get the surge in just a terrible, terrible way. So want to emphasize that because we have to focus on our local area here too. So this is 2 p.m. on the American model on that Thursday. And by the way, another thing, might not, really be working out for things like Bradford Homecoming this week. I know Friday might be better, but there might be a lot of cleanup depending on how things go with this. So I know we're based in Bradford County, and there's different things planned. And I know those Thursday plans, are out the window at this point, I would say. And then the Friday plans, well, if we don't have it as bad as what we could have it, then the worst would be over, but you could have a lot of cleanup here, could have extensive damage depending on exactly where it hits. This is 2 p.m. on that Thursday. Okay, so 5 p.m. This hasn't making landfall quicker here, by maybe just a bit. And again, it kind of pushes it east here. This is 5 p.m. there on that Thursday, 2100 there in terms of Zulu time. I know that didn't mean a lot to most of you, but that's how we have to look at it here. And that's not a great picture for a lot of our, areas as we're looking here a little bit further east of the official track, because this has, instead of making landfall from Jefferson County, Taylor County, this has them making landfall here as we kind of zoom on in, and that surge comes right into Cedar Key, and it just had a terrible fire there. They've had all the storms at Idalia, even Debbie this year. They don't need more of this, and this type of track here, wouldn't be as bad for Taylor County, but a track with the wind coming right up into Cedar Key, that would be catastrophic probably for those folks. It would be worse than Idalia on a track like this with that surge is coming right up there in toward Levy County. And then you just have to really be cognizant of that as we look, and then we'll go ahead and kind of go. That's 8 p.m. It was very, very quickly. I mean, that's so quick, and that can, for one, you don't have as much rain. We've had a lot of rain lately. That could help a little bit with things of that sort. But we could be in a situation here where we end up having the inland wind impact to be magnified a little bit more. I mean, we could have hurricane conditions into Georgia here. That would be, what I would expect here currently even. So be prepared even in Georgia. This could be very fast moving. Remind me a little of Michael in some ways, but the current forecast is a Cat 2 to Cat 3 at landfall, but again, some models are shown higher, but a track further east might not, let it get to Cat 4 plus. But again, we got to just be really careful here with this. And this is the forecast for 8 p.m. on that Thursday. I know it's a tricky situation here. As I'm looking at the map, it has the eye there over it looks like Eccles County there, right around Staytonville and Needmore. And you'd be getting it very hard about Austin. Even, this track or the other track, but then further east, I mean, it'd be very severe around Lake City and Baker County on a path like this. And even Bradford County, I'm seeing here. I know it looks like it's clearing out at that point. It's moving very quick. But, I mean, the pressures here in the 980s, we had some, as I recall here, a little bit lower than that during Irma. But other than that, none of the other storms have had a pressure that low here. You can't see it on the screen, but my source kind of shows me what the pressure could be in this scenario, and that indicates generally worse conditions. So, that means a situation where it'd be a worse storm since Irma in Bradford County, maybe not on this exact forecast. I'll back it up a little. And we have to kind of interpolate between the points. Maybe, close to what Irma was. Maybe not quite as bad, but, this could shift. This could be worse than what this is showing. You almost have to think about, well, in between those points, could the pressure be lowered in the 980s here? Irma 970s or other storms here recently have all been, for historical, my barometer, in the 990s, really. So, Medallia and some of the other impacts. But let's see, this is a look here at winds, as we're looking there, And you can see, I mean, even in these reds and purple, pretty strong right at the coast. And we saw this in Irma. It was kind of surprising, really. But you see, even at the East Coast, we have a lot of wind because of the overall pattern here. Some stronger wind. It's not something you would have thought about, but you also got to think about here. We saw it in Irma. We saw it in Dora in '64. Some of those area rivers could, because of the wind direction, could just all of a sudden really go up. We have the coastal flood advisory, but could end up having, very serious conditions. We saw it in Jackson, Winter, and Irma. Might not have as much rain as Irma, but we'll have, the wind pattern here and the pressure pattern and already the antecedent rainfall and the higher levels to begin with. That's problematic here. So we just got to be really cognizant of that as we look here. We just have to be really mindful. So this is the 8 p.m. Look at that. I'll set this up here. You can see, I mean, by 11 o'clock, I mean, you still have some nasty conditions at points in some ways, but really it moves out very rapidly under this scenario here, as quick as you ever see a storm like this move. But this goes back to the coast earlier, and I mean, you see, as I look here, you see some of these winds in Gilchrist, Alachua, Marion counties here in this forecast here. So there's a potential scenario. It's a little east again of the official track, but you'd have hurricane conditions in Gilchrist, Alachua, Levy, obviously. You have them in Marion County. So again, something to kind of keep in mind here as we're looking at the situation. I know it's kind of interesting to watch because you can kind of see. So you see that center there, and then it kind of, our system wants to put the center further up on the wind model. I'm not 100% sure why, to be honest. There must be a bug in here where it's trying to kind of read this a little bit different, because as we kind of look at things there, that would have an impact, obviously. But we'll just have to kind of see how that is here. The overall reflection of the model and the base reflectivity slightly differs, but again, just wanted to break that down for you here as we look at the situation, as we monitor things and the like. So again, just going to continue to watch that. We have a lot of other graphics to get to here, so let's go ahead and kind of start to get into some of that here as we move along, because there's a lot to talk about in all honesty here. So let's go ahead and jump on into the graphics. And this is the 11 p.m. update from the Hurricane Center. There's max winds at 35 miles an hour. This is forecast to be, with the official forecast, and that landfall there around Jefferson County right now. Monticello getting maybe about the worst, but it's still going to be a very big storm overall, so keep that in mind. But it's forecast to be the strongest United States landfalling hurricane so far this year. And we keep talking about specific areas. We got to still be kind of careful about that. That's why, I mean, this is my first extended update, too, because we still have so much, uncertainty. This could still, according to this forecast, make landfall around Panama City to Tampa, and that changes a lot of different things. Attract to Panama City or attract to Tampa. I mean, that completely changes a lot of things for a lot of folks around here. So it's still, there's still a lot of uncertainty, and since the storm hadn't got, organized, we don't have like an eye to track or even a center circulation, since it's not officially tropical, then, makes things harder. I know the potential tropical cyclone advisories really do help. That's something pretty new, because if we didn't have this, it'd make it even harder to warn you guys about this. I mean, we have, I know, a state of emergency in play in Florida. Not that we wouldn't have that now. It's just we have that, for many areas, and folks see this and start to get prepared. But the Cat 5s in history, they go from nothing to something really bad really quick here. As you look back, that's just kind of how it's worked with storms like Michael and Andrew. So we got to be really careful here, folks. I know Michael, it was not even forecasted to be, something as strong as this with the first track of it. So that's the thing. We got to be really, really careful here with this. This, has the potential to strengthen very rapidly, have that rapid intensification that we always talk about in meteorology and tropical meteorology. And now the size and strength, this could bring devastating impacts to the area. You see, 8 a.m. it's off of 4 minors per se, but 8 p.m. it's already impacting, with that landfall, maybe in Jefferson County, but maybe it's down the coast. That means earlier up the coast, a little later, especially in the panhandle. But yeah, about 105-mile-an-hour hurricane earlier on that Thursday. Tropical storm watch for the Keys, a little bit of southwest Florida right now, and but 110-mile-an-hour winds there to ward the panhandle sustained. And I know we'll have the advisories, watches and warnings coming out Tuesday, today per se at this point will be the day when we start having all that information come out. I know we've been in alert mode here since late Thursday, but that's, a situation where you're going to start seeing, areas of yellow and red and colors like that, pink on the map here, blue, over Florida. More and more it's going to fill in. And again, in our area, we're going to have, tropical storm watches, hurricane watches, storm surge watches, storm surge warnings. We have, that potential. We're ultimately going to see some areas under a hurricane warning. So keep that in mind here. That alert will go off on your phone. That's like an emergency alert, like an Amber Alert is. So keep that in mind. And you see the names here. Helene's the next one in the Atlantic hurricane season. And then after that, Isaac. I know names have generally been the ones that have been the issue for Florida. If we look Ian, Irma, Dahlia, Ivan here in the Panhandle. Well, that potential tropical cyclone last week in the Carolina didn't develop, so or it would have got the name Helene. It had the winds, it just didn't have the organization for it. But Isaac, this would have been named Isaac instead of be Helene. It looks like. I know other systems in the Atlantic we're not too concerned about. If somehow they got the name first, which is unlikely, then that'll cause, confusion. But we just, because of the short timeline here, think it's just best to go ahead and just kind of pre-name this Helene so people know what the danger that could be headed their way with what would probably be Hurricane Helene on that Thursday approaching the Florida coast here. So, really nasty situation as we're live right now on Facebook, Twitter/X, YouTube, and Twitch. So, just trying to let you guys know exactly what's going on here. And you can see tracking the potential tropical cyclone here. And you can see from the Hurricane Center in Miami, this is their graphic about the most likely arrival times. I know these chances for tropical storm winds, the areas in red, higher chance, orange, still a pretty high chance, and even those dark yellows, you got to really be prepared. And the timelines, what I really want to focus on, though, by 8 a.m. around Tampa with some of these, and then, through the day across the area by 8 p.m. I know it's not labeled here on this graphic from the Hurricane Center, but 8 p.m. would be that line across areas just north of a viewing area. So everybody on, our area, Thursday's the day, really. So we really got to be prepared. A little bit of outer band action on Wednesday, but it's going to be moving very quickly here. So Thursday's really the day, and that means you need to have those preparations wrapped up there. Really by these times you see on the screen. I mean, even later in Wednesday could have some issues with some outer bands, but really, by the time you get to bed Wednesday night, or at the very latest here, when you first get out Thursday, you need to have those preparations wrapped up. Even by then, we could have some tornado threats still early Thursday based on some of the modeling. But let's just say, so Wednesday night, before you get to bed, you need to have everything taken care of. And if you're going to evacuate, you should do that by Wednesday night is my recommendation here. So that's kind of the storyline. If we do get a situation with the ships real quick toward Tampa, then that could be a lot of folks having to evacuate very quickly because of the surge where you run from the water. Is the general saying you hide from the wind, though? In some cases, Taylor County could have situation with the mandatory evacuation potential, and then you have mobile homes, and folks are running from the wind too. But the point being, the water is what we'll really have to be careful, because we could have, if this were to sift into Tampa and a really quickly strengthening storm, it could be really chaotic on the highways. That's not out of the question here. You think of I-75, I remember in Arla, we had a week almost to prepare for that one. We've talked about this for a while, but the impacts really in the model, and I know on Sunday we really started to see things come into focus, and it's still not certain. And right now the track's further up, but still enough surge into Tampa to cause big problems. But a further shift here, and depending on how it gets its act together, it could be really problematic for Tampa. We always talk about Tampa, and they always seem to miss out. But just like North Central Florida, I'm talking about really the Stark Gainesville area of North Central Florida. Missing out on the worst over the years in general. But with the areas Tampa and then Stark Gainesville are overdue here, and honestly, a track up from Tampa or just north of Tampa, the surge coming into Tampa and to start Gainesville could get both folks, both set of folks, Tampa and then Stark / Gainesville, with the same system. That's what Charlie was supposed to do until it shifted around back in '04. So this is expected to be a bigger storm. Expected to be a bigger storm, though, structurally than Charlie. But as we look here, this is based on the 11 o'clock track. Pretty much I was expecting things in the model to go slightly east. They went a little bit further than that you saw on the GFS, but that's kind of right now, as well, we'll say the worst conditions would be based on things, but remember, this is subject to change based on track adjustments, so remain alert. But this does have the potential, believe it or not, to be worse than Hurricane Idalia, but mainly on Thursdays when we see the impacts. And wind, well, we could see extended power outages with just, numbers that you don't ever want to show you guys. But maybe sustained winds there, getting upwards, with a landfall with 110 or some 150 miles an hour of wind sustained. You say Taylor County, Perry area, maybe winds at 90 to 110 with gusts to 130, not out of the question. I know back in Idalia, it was a little harder to verify some of these winds, and they lowered it. With that, I think it was weakening someone. Landfall, Roy, that proved to be the storyline. Hurricane hunters were watching it, but overland, there's not as many spots there to track things, which I know, it's a less populated area, and that's good, but of course, hidden area that was hit last year is very bad. So it's always a give and take here in meteorology and geography for that matter. But rainfall threat, we still got to be careful. We've had some of these areas, in our region have had a lot of rain lately. But this hurricane's been moving quick here, but we're seeing 3 to 6 inches of rain with isolated 8-inch totals here, a possibility. And that, it's not just overwhelming here like we've seen in some systems, but still problematic enough. I know in the eye wall, you could still get a lot. So we'll kind of watch to see how the models pick up on that, and if they increase totals. I went a little higher in some of the models, honestly, on that, just based on histories with eye walls and looking at stuff across the area. Another thing is, we've had just over the last several years, there's so many experiences across our region with different hurricanes, and you would think after a while that, we would kind of not have any for a while, but we talked about the hyper-active season ahead of time this year. We had Debbie, but we were hoping maybe we wouldn't get another one, but Florida is almost undoubtedly going to get hit by a hurricane here on Thursday. It's going to looking like be Hurricane Helene. I know we had that stretch from after Wilma in '05 to Hermine in 2016 without a Florida hurricane landfall, and now we've just had countless. You can't even remember all of them. There's been so many at this point since 2016. Even some of them, like Matthew, didn't actually make landfall in Florida. That still had a big impact. Officially make landfall. It did not here in Florida, but still, a big deal. But storm surge 9+ feet above ground. Extreme threats. Prepare to evacuate. I know, even with Matthew being off the coast, it still had big problems. Now this one, it's got to hit somebody pretty much in Florida. It's not like that, even though Matthew was a big deal back in 2016. This one, is going to make landfall somewhere in Florida. That one didn't make landfall until South Carolina, I believe. But this one has to, because of the way things are, in geography here, it has to pretty much hit Florida somewhere. And with this, forecast here, if the track verifies, and the intensity forecast verifies, widespread major damage is likely. We also have to watch out for isolated tornadoes, too. I know didn't really dive into it too much because some of the winds could be stronger than a tornado. But as I was looking at things, I did notice maybe early Thursday some type of a window for a threat before we really get into the core of Helene. So that's something to think about. But again, adjustments expected in the forecast here, so keep that in mind. as we're looking at this overall scenario. So, and then the next advisory comes out from the Hurricane Center at 2 a.m., but the forecast track update won't come out at 5 a.m. You can see that though, cloudweather.com, and then we'll run updates as needed on the different platforms and post different things as needed here to keep you guys safe and informed, obviously, on what's expected to be Helene here in pretty short order as we're looking at things, as we're tracking the overall scenario. Let's see if there's any questions or comments real quick. I don't see any right now, but just thanks so much for tuning in and trusting me here with this scenario. I'm going to go ahead and see here. I don't see any recon information right now. I just wanted to check to see. I know the models, trying to get some of that information in there, and that's going to be invaluable. And they'll be out there. I know, quite a bit as we look ahead and toward the timeline here. So very important to keep in mind, as I know we're going to keep watching the storm system, and I kind of already went over some of this, but this, here our Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale, talking about, the notes in this. So right now I think a Cat 1's less likely because, the pattern would favor a pretty quick intensification. Category 2, well, if that were to be the landfall strength, it might end up being because it was further east here, and that would increase impacts for Stark and Gainesville, but it would also increase the Tampa storm surge. Okay, so you got to be really kind of mindful of that here as we're looking at things. And then as we look ahead here, Cat 3, that's probably the most likely strength. And then Cat 4 would be catastrophic. And then if somehow in a terrible way we got a Cat 5, it would probably make it have to be, maybe more like Apalachicola or Wakulla County, because that means it had a little bit more time and a little bit more room to gather itself to be just a historic scenario, because you have to have everything going right for you for a Cat 5 pretty much. And when I say right, that's meteorology talk. It's everything going wrong, though, for you guys here locally. So, again, that would be very bad. That means everything went wrong. And in meteorology talk, that means everything came together to be just a historic disaster like what we saw in storms like Michael and Andrew. And again, a lot of times that's off the table when we're talking about stuff, especially in this part of the state, because, really, haven't really seen that before. But in this situation, the model guide and some of the hurricane models have shown a different situation here where that's not off the table. I mean, we were seeing, and I'm going to see if we have some of the newest runs here behind the scenes real quick. I can't put them on screen necessarily, but I want to see if we have any of them run all the way through. I don't know if they are yet, but they were strengthening this so quickly here. We're getting pressures. I mean, what you see, I mean, they were showing stronger pressures, meaning a stronger storm at landfall. And some of the hurricane models, which are supposed to take into account some different factors, the environment, about strengthening, and they were showing worse pressures in Michael or Andrew, meaning a stronger storm into northern Florida, somewhere in northern Florida, the Big Bend maybe. That could be a Cat 5 strength. So that's not the official forecast, but we got to be really careful and aware that this could strengthen more rapidly than we've really seen in our 62 counties. I wouldn't say before. Now, Michael, 2018, we didn't have cloud weather back then, but Franklin County, some of those counties, Liberty County got it very significant, and in Southwest Georgia as well. But we got to be really careful. Tallahassee's got to be really careful because this goes right into Tallahassee. That could cause issues here. Let's see, a Cat 3 goes into Tallahassee. If it goes into Jefferson County, then your western Iowa is in Tallahassee. That's quite a bit worse than Hermine, and that means trees down everywhere. That means, infrastructure problems for a good bit with the state capital of Florida, and that means Florida State University is probably out of classes and or in virtual classes for a while. FAMU the same way. So, could even the FSU Clemson game might have to be moved. They're in football, that's next week, I know, but there could still be lingering issues then, depending on how strong this is. I mean, based on how Tallahassee is, I know, your tall buildings, you might not have just completely, knocked down. It doesn't happen really, but you could have the windows blown out of a lot of those, depending on the ultimate strength of this here. And a lot of, other structures could have, just depending on how this is. There's a lot of uncertainty still, but, some of those could have big problems. And the trees are the most, problematic. And you also got to think about, they have certain protocol in play, but if the state capitol there in Tallahassee, you have emergency operations center, and I know they have, I believe that building's, or if not that building, they're planning on building another building to maybe withstand like a Cat 5 hurricane. I want to say off the top of my head, but I know if it were to head right into them, as a major hurricane right into Leon County and the like, then there may, honestly, they might go ahead and move some things around, obviously move some assets to different parts of the state here, so the messaging can still get out, despite, big issues. I mean, they have generators and the like, but there could be some pretty nasty damage and trees down that cause problems. Just there's a lot of uncertainty still, but I want to just make sure we're, as kind of detailed as we can be on potential impacts. And then I know Adalia, we all remember that one, and there's some eerie, really indications of similarities here with what we're seeing in some of the models of this year's storm could be worse. I know we had Debbie already, which is bad enough. I mean, hitting a pretty similar area, but compared to Adalia, it wasn't to that level. This one could be that or even worse, which again, it's kind of hard to even talk about considering look what happened in North Sea Beach last year. If you guys, if you're around here, I'm sure you remember, and if you're from other parts of the country, you probably remember too, but what a devastating event that was. And then just some preparedness considerations here. Make sure secure property and decide whether evacuation is necessary. Like threatening storm surge is likely across parts of the zone here. And you got to keep in mind a basic disaster supplies kit includes water, non-perishable food, battery-powered or hand-crank radio, weather radio, flashlight, and first aid kit. And it's also important to have cash and gas. I know internet could be down for a while. I know if somehow we have a lot of backup systems, but if somehow we're not able to broadcast for a while, you have interactive radar still. That'll be available clouder.com/radar. And I know you also want to have gas in case you do need to eventually leave, your area, because maybe the food supply that you have is starting to run short after things are a little bit more secure around the region, but you're still without power, as you could have extended power outages. I know last year, despite how bad things were, power came back for a lot of folks, that as quickly as you could expect here. I mean, it was really pretty remarkable. We saw the restoration in Florida, and I know the assets are going to be, deployed here as things do evolve, but you still got to turn these devices up here as powered as they're possible. I have that in here. I have to kind of change these wordings for each storm, honestly, at this point. I mean, power outages are likely or a guarantee even across parts of the state. Now, depending on where this hits, the state, how it impacts our area, or if it goes, further south, well, that could change the number pretty drastically. I mean, Irma has so many more outages because it hit so much more of the state, the way it was so big and where it hit, but Adalia still had enough in high concentration of outages in the affected areas. But full list available here, ready.gov/kit for your supplies, and just be ready. Also about the tornadic situations, be ready to move into your room, and we'll go over more tips on that in a moment. After a storm moves through, making sure you stay away from power lines, and also generator safety, that's critical here too. So just keep that in mind. So I know it's a good thing that you have football during a bye week this week. FSU is at SMU there in Dallas. It's a situation where, depending on where this hits, one of those two areas would probably be in a spot where it'd be hard to have a game Saturday. So I know, and we're on and looking at weather stuff. I am, and it's just a one-man band, but I would think if they haven't already talked about it, FSU is probably making plans to leave a little bit early for that game at SMU there on Saturday. Try to get out ahead of the storm maybe Wednesday. I don't know. I mean, classes will probably be, canceled later in the week there toward FSU. So, and other schools, all sorts of school districts across the area are going to have, changes. And already said about Bradford Homecoming, what, is probably going to be, impacted here in terms of, having to be shifted around here with the storm impact. And again, as much as I'm just going to double check, see if there's anything here in a couple of sources real quick, because, when we're talking like this, and just when we get ready to do the weather coverage, I wish I had a whole newsroom here of folks who could tell me this stuff, but I kind of have to look it up on the fly, and I hadn't seen anything about a lot of changes. I know a lot of folks may be, and for better or for worse, waiting until the storm actually gets a name or alerts, watches, and warnings start going into place to make the changes. But we got to be kind of careful here. We got to be kind of careful in this situation, because this could develop so rapidly here on us that we could really be, for a lack of a better word, maybe almost a panic situation if things come together the wrong way. I've seen it, with storms in other parts of the country before, so we got to be really careful here. I've been selling this for a week, pretty much, this graphic, and it's really important. You want to have, maybe bags of potato chips or something. So if you're without power for a while, or other type of stuff that you can eat without the power being on here, as if you're not evacuating. Some areas will have to evacuate because you have to run from the water. In some mobile homes, you may get put under a mandatory evacuation here, even far inland, pretty quickly here. Tuesday, later today, now, could be the day where we have a lot of alerts, a lot of changes to schools, a lot of evacuations being ordered here. So keep that in mind. I do see that Bradford County School District did put out a note that with the expectation of severe weather in our area this week, there will be a need for flexibility with our homecoming schedule, and they're going to be giving updates and make decisions as we look ahead in that timeline. So kind of giving that idea that, things are going to be shifting here. It's almost a guarantee at this point. So that's my words about almost being a guarantee, but they're going to shift here. You can just see it in the modeling. I know things like, Tornado World, generally, I know they're on a Thursday night. There's no way that's going to be happening on a Thursday night this year. No matter the track, even if it hits in Panama City, you'd still have some impacts at that time. If it hits in Tampa, then actually that could be, in a weird way, especially if it's just north of Tampa, worse for us here around Stark and Gainesville. So we're going to have to be paying attention here. I know next 5 days rainfall forecast, which mainly is about Thursday for our area. You can see 5+ inches on average toward the Big Bend region. I said 3 to 6, but isolated 8 for Taylor County, and this kind of backs that on up there. Most of that's Thursday. I know, again, so the next 5 days, but that's kind of the storyline. You see Stark right now, and this is subject to change. It says a widespread 3 inches. Jacksonville as well. St. Augustine area, maybe, closer to 2.5 inches there, but that thread goes into Georgia. You see how far up it goes. I have it where you can't see all of it, but this goes all the way in, with some of these pretty high totals, not as high as what we're seeing here, but in the Missouri and the like. So got to be careful in America's heartland there too. Granted, you're not going to have the wind, but you, depending on how things set up, could have a good bit of rain, maybe a tornado threat. Honestly, I haven't really focused on looking at that too far ahead. I'll glance at it real quick here behind the scenes. To see if anything is showing any different in the tornado guidance here in terms of rotating storms. Honestly, maybe a tornado threat like around Orlando too, as the storm's making landfall further up, could happen. And if it makes landfall further west, then you're going to have a threat around Stark and Jacksonville, a little bit worse in terms of tornadoes, if you're not getting as much of the wind from the actual cyclone, with the higher gust. We saw in Mike, we had a, tornadic situation around Bradford County in 2018 when it made landfall in Panama City. I know GFS is really going, toward the Carolinas with this, and it's just interesting what it's showing. Let me see how much rain it's showing toward Missouri. It's showing, some different patterns come into play, and it's showing a lot of rain, though, in, northwest Georgia, 10 inches around Rome, Georgia, modeling now. So that's, more rain than you have anywhere in Florida, and it shows a pocket around 6-7 inches in southeast Georgia as well. But you got to be careful. This could be a big deal. We, may lose sight of it a little bit because we have to focus on our area. But depending on how far due north it goes, and now GFS has it going further east, but if it actually went more due north into Atlanta, that could cause big problems, widespread power outages, and tree damage there. But even further east, you'd have an issue where areas, like even Augusta could get pretty bad conditions, and this is taking a little closer to the ocean. Not that it would be, just a powerful hurricane by then, but it could still, if it's moving as quick as some of the models show, it could still be, around a Cat 1 all the way to Augusta, maybe. I know with Michael, it hit a little further west, and it was a Cat 1 around Macon, now, give or take. So, again, we're going to be on the air here with live coverage, wall-to-wall coverage, obviously, as it's warranted on all the different platforms there. Facebook, KC Cloud WX, Cloud Weather, Twitter /X at Cloud KC, YouTube at Cloud Weather, and then you have Twitch there, Cloud Weather, and then cloudweather.com, and then you have the interactive radar there, too, for when we're not, on the air here, or even when we're on the air, you want to see something different than what I'm showing, then go over there. So, again, something to keep in mind as we go ahead and see the tornado safety tips. Now, we do have that threat, and as we look here, it's Thursday, but, some of these tornado warning safety tips may, if you're, faced eventually with like an extreme wind warning or something, could end up being, something that you have to focus on more for you guys. And the only time we've had that really, since we've been doing cloud weather in our area, was during Adalia last year, and I was even in Live Oak and the like there with the extreme wind warning, of course, Perry, and you can have tornado-like winds with this hurricane, and then a tornado warning means a tornado has been detected using radar or spotted, but we could also have just tornado-like winds in a hurricane. You can even have vortices in a hurricane. I know there's some talk about that during Andrew. Excuse me, I know Adalia had some of that talk too, but the winds, get so strong in this, it's like, in Andrew, I remember the talk was reading about that, hearing and watching different videos. It was, about how we almost had like mini tornadoes in Andrew, but you want to just try to avoid taking Saturn a mobile home in a hurricane, especially if you have the worst of that, and in the tornadic situation, you want to get inside in a sturdy building, put as many walls between you and the outside as possible, and you want to protect yourself from flying debris by putting a bicycle helmet on. I know for folks that didn't evacuate during Andrew, Brian Norcross, legendary FSU alum in 92, working for WTVJ-TV, told the folks to put the mattress over their heads to protect themselves. Hope we're not in a situation where it comes to that, but if we have a sudden track shift here and, inland areas get it pretty bad here, and you don't have time to evacuate, then that might be something you have to do. I mean, that's a last resort, something to keep in the back of your mind, though, just in case you need that advice. I mean, it's something you really don't want to have to use, putting the mattress over your head to protect yourself from the flying debris, but that can work for a tornado or just extreme hurricane winds here as well. And of course, tornado watches will likely be issued, so conditions will be favorable for tornadic activity. You want to stay tuned for the latest and charge the devices as you would for the hurricane, and have multiple ways to receive alerts. And I know in Laura, back toward 2020 in Louisiana, there was a situation there where we ended up having the overall pattern there. We had the overall pattern there where, we had tornado warning. I wasn't too concerned because then the hurricane winds would actually exceed really, or make it harder to tell closer to the core where the landfall was. Hard to even tell where a tornado was because the winds were just so strong. So, this almost is more for areas a little further away from the core and the eye wall of what we're expecting from Helene. So, as we look at the covered area, we're always watching things for the 62 counties again. We're going to have to pay attention for shifts, and those hips do, for tornadoes do really, if you don't evacuate, they work for, the extreme wind warnings really as well. If you're not evacuated, you really got to go into your room and treat it like a tornadic situation. That's when we have sustained winds about 115 miles an hour. So I believe that's how they do it. Some offices have done it different over the years, but that's about what it is. And that's Cat 3 type winds, and you got to just be ready to, hunker down really as if a tornado's coming your way, because that's pretty much what the winds are like. And you got to get into your room, maybe even, especially kids, but really everybody put that football helmet on, bicycle helmet on, and have those shoes on in case, like, let's say a tree crashes in your home and you have debris everywhere. You want to make sure you don't cut your feet up. But then, speaking of trees, you got to be really careful too. If you're in a situation where you have a tree close to your home, I mean, you got really two state maybe get it taken care of here. Maybe a little bit of wind stay, but point being, if you're concerned about it, and if you're able to, even if you're not in a mandatory evacuation zone, you maybe still should evacuate, because we've seen it. We saw it in Debbie. A tree fell there to Ward Fannin Springs, killed a young person. We saw it in other areas here too, and that could happen again here. So, it very well could. So you just keep that in mind, if you're able to, even if you're not in a mandatory evacuation order, and you're not necessarily in a mobile home, if you're in a mobile home, if you're concerned about a tree falling on your home, on your bedroom, maybe you can go to a different part of the house to sleep, something like that, or be in. But, if you're just too concerned, if you can, you evacuate. Keep in mind, the traffic could be a mess on the road, and hotel prices, I know there's price gouging hotline in Florida. You can call if things are going up there, out of what you would expect. But, the hotels will be filling up nonetheless, whether the prices are high or not. So just keep that in mind as we're looking at things. And then your tropical climatology, you're still, until October 10th or so. You still have a lot of storms out there on average, and we're going to have another one in Helene here in pretty short order here with that official naming, it would seem. So, again, just continuing to watch here the very latest as we try to give you all the details you need to protect you, your friends, your family. Don't see any questions or comments right now, but just thanks so much for tuning in and trusting me on this very long update. It's all about keeping you guys safe and informed. And then we're just trying to make sure you guys know exactly what's going on here as things do develop. So we're going to be here as it is warranted here on our different sources as I go ahead right now and say here some historic hurricanes. The reason I put this in here, in case this shifts to like a landfall of a Cat 2, Cat 3, Category 2, Category 3 around Cedar Key. Well, we've seen that a couple of times in history. Still be a Cat 2 in that circled area within 50 miles of Stark. That was in 1896 and 1888. And I know that 1896 one, that was a Cat 3, all the way through according to the records. It may have even been stronger, quite honestly, because it wouldn't necessarily make sense to be, Cat 3 all the way through. It might have been stronger at the coast, but it just caused, devastation, even around, Bradford County. Keep in mind, I know Bradford County, and Union County were together back then, but we had a lot of fatalities, even pretty far east. So we've got to be really careful here with this, is what I'm saying. That's a very similar time of year in 1896 as well. There's even a book about that on the internet. So right now the track is into Jefferson County, but that's definitely, a possibility, a track around Cedar Key, which would be terrible for storm surge for them. Bad for Lake City, bad for Gainesville, bad for Stark, not as bad for Tallahassee, and the like, and, areas of that, coastline like Franklin and McCulloch counties, but this would also be worse for like Tampa. So that's not the official track right now. The official track, and there's a cone, so you got to keep that in mind, but the center of the track is making landfall in Jefferson County, but this could shift around on us here for sure. And that's the expectation when you have this. Errors can be pretty big within that cone of concern. So you got to be prepared all the way from around Panama City to Tampa with this for a potential landfall. As we look right now, since we're not going to have a lot of time for graphics like this later in the week probably, I wanted to go over the rain chances here for 62 counties in general. And we're talking about Tuesday, just a 10% chance. So that's a great day for you guys to prepare here for Helene. On that Wednesday, up to 50%. Some outer squalls coming in, especially maybe later on. Get some daytime heating mixed in. We'll watch if we get any isolated severe warnings. But then on Thursday, Helene, and, sometimes if a storm's really tightly wound, like Michael was, you don't get as many out ahead, with the warnings. But on Thursday, the 26th, Helene, it poses a major threat to our area. almost 100% chance of rain, which I've maybe done maybe once, maybe never, just based on the scope of the size of this in a model, and looks like everybody on Thursday in our 62 counties is probably going to get at least some rain. Some areas, a lot more of an impact, but 100% chance on Thursday. So I know we were watching the forecast, back last week, the models, we were concerned, but they were, having it come in maybe a little later. They moved up. It's going to be Thursday now here, folks, and you got to prepare. Tuesday is your last really clean weather day to prepare here for what could be a major hurricane. It's happening pretty quick here, folks, so that's why we got to be careful. I don't want to hype this up. I don't want to, make you nervous, but, we have Tuesday, and then we have some of Wednesday for sure. I mean, you still have a chance to evacuate on Wednesday and the like, for most of the day, because the way the squalls, outer bands will work is you have bands in between here, and then you have windows to get out and about, but it's not going to be perfect weather. But then Thursday is today, and then Friday, your aftermath, the last cleanup, obviously, but also some, wind maybe lingering on the backside and some lingering moisture maybe as well. So just got to keep that in mind. Okay, the latest modeling's coming on in here. Some of our latest hurricane models. I'm looking at them behind the scenes here. And let me go through all these here real quick. So let me see if they're all in. Okay, not all of them are in. The H Wharf is not in yet. Let's see here. The H Mon. Okay, that is in here, and that shows, maybe a landfall southern parts of Taylor County, northern parts of Dixie County is about like a Cat 4, which we've talked about how strong these models have been showing. That's why we're so concerned. That's, very similar spot, almost the same spot as the Dahlia, but even a little stronger. Where the surge is terrible for Horseshoe Beach, it would seem, especially even points like in Levy County. So I'm kind of looking at this on the fly here. And, of course, not as bad on the west side because you have the water pushing out. But then it kind of has this going up toward Valdosta with winds, and conditions worse than a Dahlia even. We had at least one fatality, I remember, after a Dahlia in Valdosta. So, this has a pressure in the 940s all the way up there. You have like Adele and some of those areas. That's one scenario. Not that far off the official track, but that's a reasonable scenario in my assessment. That landfall time, by the way, so I was heading around 8 o'clock, right before sunset on that Thursday as we're looking there in that one scenario. So that's the HMON, the HAFS/A model, has it hitting just a tad later in the timeline, like around 11 or maybe 10 o'clock, something like that. But it has it hitting a pretty similar spot, really. It has about a Cat 3 to Cat 4. Something around there. So that would be problematic, obviously. Sometimes the hurricane models, you got to keep in mind that, and these are on tropicaltidbits.com. You can look at these. I don't really have a way to pull them right in right now to say you, but just, be careful with, individual runs and the variability. But, with this situation here, you just got to be really careful with just the overall impacts. Because so HMON has a 929 pressure at landfall. HMON, okay, well, let's see. Oh, wait a minute, let's try that again. The HAFSA model there, it has a landfall pressure pretty similar, as we're looking, but it says, that's like a rerun of a day written all over it in some ways. With this and the winds coming on up there, Suwannee County really bad, and think of areas there. Dallin Park could get hit again in that situation. Maybe slightly east of some areas. Like where Michael hit in 2018 there, where that one hit up toward Macon. This has it going up there a little bit further east of that, but then we have the let's try the HAFSB model. It's out now too with a landfall, and it says something. And again, these are more good for intensity than track sometimes, but it's a pretty similar spot too. It has Taylor County and a pressure there, and then, between about 923 and 944. And, well, that's about, Michael, I want to say it was 919 at landfall. Trying to do that off the top of my head, so I'm going to look that up real quick for you guys. But my point being is a lot of cause for concern here, because, that's something, that could definitely happen. As we're looking at this, I said a Cat 4 plus earlier on the post on social media couldn't be rolled out, and it still cannot be rolled out. Yeah, pressure 919 millibars of Michael, and that's something very similar, which means, Perio's had a lot of bad wind damage in Idalia. Well, this time, if this were to verify some of our hurricane models, which is not the official forecast, but if they were to verify, Perry, if they verified, we'd have to up the winds quite a bit even on that local impact graphic, and it could pretty much be, just destroyed, which is just terrible to have to say here, folks. I don't want to say it, but we have to tell you what could happen. It could end up in another town, or a number of towns that are destroyed in our area on Thursday. If this is like a Cat 4, depending on where it hits, you really have problems. Mobile homes destroyed, but then, that's a pretty big increase in winds and magnitude of wind. It could be Monticello, could be, in Crawfordville, it could be under Tallahassee. The building standards, some of those buildings will be able to withstand higher winds, but others could be destroyed. If it goes that way, it could be, situation, as we're looking, even Valdosta could have big problems, and could be, Live Oak, could be Lake City, could be Cedar Key, could even be, areas there with, big problems like that. Yeah, I hesitate saying a little further east, because then it's probably just a tad weaker, but still, widespread extended power outages with a lot of trees down, maybe not just, total devastation, but it's not out of the question. So we have to just be monitoring that here. So as we keep looking, I know I'm waiting for the 2 o'clock update from the Hurricane Center in Miami to see if they have any new numbers on Potential Tropical Cyclone 9. I know that update from 11, it had winds there, and I'll go to satellite real quick. Well, first, let me just go ahead and see the temperatures here before we kind of forget to go over this. But you do have here the forecast for Tuesday, 92 degrees, Wednesday, 88, Thursday, 80. Helene, major threat here toward the area, and then Friday, 27th, 87 degrees. So warming up, and that could be an issue with heat, exhausting after the storm. On the back side of this, that's pretty warm here. It's not, like fall coming in here. As we're looking on the back side of this, I'll check our dew points and values like that to see some things. There's still a good bit of moisture on the back side of this. So it could still be, we might get a little breakout point there, but still could be, fairly humid. So that's problematic here as we look toward the weekend. If you're still without power, as we look ahead into toward the timeline, I know, we're going to be looking at things, from the National Hurricane Center, nhc.noaa.gov, the Weather Service, weather.gov, and the like. There's all sorts of stuff I look at here, but I'm kind of seeing some of that stuff in case, this storm went right through our area and we just get knocked off. We're always on for all 20-1 storms in the 62 counties, and always landfall and hurricanes here too, obviously, landfall and tropical systems. But in case, we have 3 backup systems to get, our signal out per se, and if they all fail, then, you have, at least some other information here. We'll be on Thursday with that landfall coverage here. And, as I'm looking, I have 3 backup, connectivity signals to get, out here our feed. I have a backup source when we don't want the power on as well. That's where we'd be doing it from, more than likely, in that scenario. So I just want to make sure you kind of are prepared here for what could happen. Let me go ahead and jump back on over right now toward the other look at things, as we're in alert mode, obviously. You can see the cold cloud tops there. Some of this is to the east, and that, if we had the center relocate a little further east, that shifts the track some, so we have to be really careful. I know Going back 4 hours, we had the hurricane aircraft out there, the Air Force reconnaissance aircraft, and you can see they were out there looking at this. And I'll take that off real quick here. I'll take that off. You can kind of see what we're dealing with in terms of some of the, storm action 4 hours ago, and then now you see some increase in that. And then as we kind of look at things here, I wanted to go ahead and pull in the models. Some of these were a little less aggressive in this last run. A new, update with the statistical guidance will come up in the system soon. But we'll see, that can vary, and I think this underdoes it some because some of these are so, and believe it or not, it's just a strong tropical storm or a Cat 1, but I think that's underdoing it because the hurricane model is showing more like, and they're more, apt to the rapid intensification potential. They're showing more like a Cat 4 plus. That's kind of splitting the difference. And the hurricane models generally do better with this, and that's not good news. That but that's kind of the storyline there. They do better with this here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking the situation. As we kind of give you the latest here, let me just say see if we have the 2 o'clock, update on in here. Bear with me, I know I've been on for a while, one of our longer late night updates, but it's very pertinent information for you, the viewers at home, as it's always about protecting you, your friends, and your family here. I know there's a look at all the different platforms we're on as we're looking at things. And then the 11 o'clock update had winds at 35 miles an hour, and at present movement north-northwest at 6 miles an hour, and the minimum central pressure 1,002 millibars. So, and the storm surge watch and play from Bonita Beach southward to Flamingo. In Florida, we have hurricane watches toward Mexico and the like. Cuba, tropical storm warnings, Grand Cayman, parts of Mexico, and Cuba, and then a tropical storm watch for the dry Tortugas, Lower Keys west of the 7-mile bridge, and Bonita Beach southward to Flamingo. But we're going to see a lot of expansions here with this as we do look ahead in toward the timeline. And of course, with this setup, expected to become a hurricane on Wednesday, continue strengthening on Thursday that moves closer toward Florida across the eastern Gulf of Mexico. 90% chance of development is what we were looking at there a little while ago. We're still waiting for the new update, but we talk about everything that happened here. We talk about everything that happened in some of these past storms. Got to keep in mind, even Debbie was just the Cat 1. It still caused a lot of power outages. And while we're waiting for that update, I just want to see you again, if you guys weren't with the coverage here back in August, just a quick glimpse of some of the power flashes we saw here toward our area during that storm. So, again, that's the storyline there. Oh, I think we just had another power flash. Another power flash. So I just kind of wanted to say, you guys, the viewers, some of that, in case you weren't with us here on the different platforms in August. I was watching that, covering that live. You saw that on the Florida 501 camera there toward portions of our region there as the situation was evolving. But so even a Cat 1, you can still have pretty dramatic impacts. And this is probably going to be stronger than that and impacting parts of our 62 counties that we're dedicated to protecting here. It's something that we really got to be careful with. As we're looking here at our map, we're in Bradford County again. Talked about it, impacts to homecoming, expected here for Bradford High School, other schools, different football games. Sure, schedule changes here. FSU's on the road though, and Florida there going to be off this week here. As we're looking at things, I know FSU, Florida, Jacksonville Jaguars have been not too good this year on the football field, but I know as we look at things, and I'm looking here, I see FAMU, they're scheduled to host Alabama A&M on Saturday, but that could shift around. But I know we just hope everybody stays safe here. FAMU, they're, when they play the higher competition, they're not winning, but when they're playing, schools, at their level there, they're, doing pretty well so far this year in the Ward to SWAC conference. But as we go ahead and, again, just continue to watch here. Since we were staying on so long, I thought I'd try to give you that 2 o'clock update in case we had some, developing news here with this. So again, we'll go ahead and jump back on over toward the infrared satellite here as the situation does evolve. Again, it is a noteworthy one here that we're going to be on top of as the situation does progress here. We just got to be very cognizant of what's going on with Helene here as it does develop. Again, officially hadn't been named yet, but we're expecting this to be named here as we look ahead in toward the timeline. So again, let me go ahead and remind you of some of the preparedness considerations. In fact, I'm just going to adjust something in that real quick here because I want to make sure you guys kind of have, an idea of the confidence is fairly high of some impact. When I say local, though, I mean this could be, areas, good bit different across our region. So just keep that in mind here. Just keep that in mind as we're looking at the situation. Again, just make sure that you're paying attention. So we are seeing patterns. I want to change the wording from possible to likely there with this. I mean, it's pretty much a guarantee here. So pulling this up, just secure that property and decide whether evacuation is necessary. Those, orders will likely be coming here across the area on Tuesday. I know WCTV in Tallahassee already talking about how Taylor County was trying to get out ahead of this, and they were reporting here that no shelters would be open there, according to Taylor County Emergency Management, as residents, are having to prepare for a likely mandatory evacuation. Again, that's from WCTV in Tallahassee's reporting, but just, that surge can be a big problem. Basic disaster supplies kit includes water, non-perishable food, battery-powered or hand-crank radio, weather radio, flashlight, and first aid kit. It's also important to have cash and gas in these situations. This, got to watch out for that life-threatening storm surge. The full kit here, information, that whole list is at ready.gov/kit. Charge up your devices as power outages are likely. Be ready to move to an interior room in a tornadic situation. And after a storm moves through, you got to be really careful. I know if the power's out, traffic lights are out, there's, not having those signals on. Sometimes there's backup systems for them, but if they're not on, you got to treat those intersections as four-way stops. But just stay away from power lines. Generator safety is critical. I know if you're messing with trees, that can be deadly too. We've seen it before here in our area. A lot of fatalities with storms happen after the storm. A lot of them from storm surge and a lot of them after the storm. I mean, you can have it happen, but you don't have as much from wind during the storm unless it's like a tree falling on a home or something like that, or a car if somebody is out and about. And that's the general storyline there. But so I know they're saying they have upped this now in the latest tropical weather outlook to near 100% chance of the potential tropical cyclone over the northwestern Caribbean Sea becoming, Helene here as we look ahead. And the latest update doesn't have it at Helene yet, though, as the Air Force Hurricane Hunter aircraft is en route to the system. So let's go ahead and kind of jump back on over to our other source here as we kind of look at this together. I want to go ahead and pull up our ISO bars here just to kind of see, and the wind arrows here too to kind of see what it's showing. And we're kind of on the edge of that right now, but we'll just kind of continue to watch it here with this situation. You can start to see, if you look real closely, the orange and the yellow, the significant tornado parameters here. We'll be watching to see how those evolve with this, how the different quadrants look here with the threat. You see some lightning. The lightning tracker picks us up on the northern edges of things here as we get closer toward Cuba. You see the aircraft now, the survey crew anyway. This may just be surveying the atmosphere around it, as but they put that data in the models based on the wording here I'm seeing. But they're out there now, some of those blue dots, trying to sample some things of the environment to get a better handle on things. But okay, so the center of this, as of the 2 a.m. intermediate advisory, located at 18.6 north, 82.8 west, about 115 miles west-southwest of Grand Cayman, about 265 miles south-southeast of the western tip of Cuba. Max sustained winds at 35 miles an hour. That present movement there northwest at about 6 miles an hour. The minimum central pressure 1,002 millibars. No changes with the watches or warnings yet, but I'm sure we'll get some updates at 5 o'clock. And I know some of that will come across even with the inland warnings and coastal warnings on our website, carter.com. We'll post that as we can. And some of that stuff comes pretty fast and furious, though. The new way they're doing this now, they changed this. It was after Debbie. The experimental graphics now have all the alerts come out at once. So that'll help us out a little bit to warn you guys. As I know, hurricane watch, we're going to have some of that, hurricane warnings even probably in our area later today or tonight. Hurricane watch means hurricane conditions are possible within the watch area, and a watch is typically issued 48 hours before the anticipated first occurrence of tropical storm force winds with conditions that make outside preparations difficult or dangerous. A hurricane warning will be 36 hours out ahead. So, got to keep that in mind here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking. So, storm surge, I know. Maybe a little around the Keys, dry Tortugas, a little bit more toward Bonita Beach and Flamingo, maybe 2 to 4 feet, but a lot higher expected as we get further up the coast. As we get closer to the time of it, we'll get the updates on that, the official numbers. So guidance already shown at least 9 feet. Possible areas of Taylor County, and then down the coast, east side of where that makes landfall, you have 9+ feet of storm surge. That's the expectation with some of those forecasts, probably going higher than that even. And we have a hurricane in the Pacific too, Hurricane John out there. It developed very quickly there. And it's something that, we've been watching to see how some of the models show that compared to the other one. But it became John around, I believe it was midnight Monday, and before midnight Tuesday, it's hidden Mexico as a major hurricane. So that's how quickly things can happen. It exceeded the forecast. Things change quickly over there, and that, can happen here too. So, and, last year it even happened even worse with exceeding the forecast of the Hurricane Otis. It became a Cat 5, just, in a terrible way for those folks out there in the Eastern Pacific. But again, we got to be careful. There's a little more information when it's in the Atlantic a lot of times, but again, we've got to be careful. We see where this is headed right now in the wind forecast. If you weren't with me earlier, that red indicates we could have hurricane gust there 8 p.m. on that Thursday. Yellow area indicates we could have tropical storm force gusts. So hurricane gust or gust of 74 or higher. Bradford and Alachua counties right now right on the edge of this. So if this shifts, maybe not, but that means gusts 70, 75, not out of the question on a path with the size of it being pretty big. But in the yellow, that means, on the edge of that, gust to 39. To get closer, gust between 39 and 73 in general. And as we kind of look, I know some of these get a little tricky because as we look, down here you have technically that is, sometimes you can say these are more for sustained winds, these different circles, the way the Hurricane Center does these, but because we don't have the purple up to the north yet, where we have your hurricane sustained, I think it's just better to kind of say hurricane gust in red, even though this is probably more about 58, miles an hour sustained or higher, but really just say hurricane gust in red and tropical storm gust there in the yellow. So again, and really, we say 39 or higher. Some of those could be, over 50, 60 miles an hour. The gust not out of the question. So especially as they get closer to the red circle. So it was a little confusing though. It's something, how many systems. So our system shows it though. Try to break it down here. There's technically, I don't have a key for this in our system, but that's just the, interpretation I've always made here with that. So again, the red area would be your hurricane gust, your yellow would be your tropical storm gust, and then pink would be your hurricane sustained, but they don't do the forecast for that far to the north here, that far in the timeline. So again, we're just gonna keep on looking here at this as we go ahead and continue to give you guys the very latest. Again, we're tracking what's expected to become Helene here in pretty short order. I'll be on as needed here on the different platforms. I'm trying to keep you guys safe and informed here. And you can see what they are right there. So I know if you watch on YouTube when I'm talking, you know, you can actually back things up here in the stream. So if you miss something and then I don't talk about it again, you can back it right up. You have that DVR functionality. So good thing maybe right now to subscribe to YouTube there. It's free to subscribe to my page there at Clouds Weather. So you can follow me on Twitter/X. You have Facebook there. You can like and follow those pages. You have Twitch there. You have the website, of course, with the different links and the likes. So we're always trying to be on top of things here for you as we look. That's going to wrap it up. A very long update here tonight, but I want to thank you so much for tuning in, trusting me. I hope you have a great night out there, and we'll be back here as the conditions warrant. I'll double check everything here. I know my sources, so a lot of the platforms that have, you know, questions, and I don't see any, but I have to check a couple others. Sometimes they don't show up on my screen, so I'll make sure if you guys ask a question on another platform, I'll try to get back with you guys on that here. If, you know, something I shared this on, maybe it won't show if there's a question. So I hope I'm not leaving anybody hanging. I'll double check that here once I get off. But for now, have a great night. We're on alert mode. It's all about protecting you, your friends, your family here with future Hurricane Helena, looks like here as it gets closer toward that Sunshine State. And it organizes potentially into a rapidly intensifying hurricane. Have a great night. Be careful preparing here. You can have folks get hurt doing that too. So just be extra careful doing that. I'll be back here as conditions warrant, probably quite a bit as the days go ahead. So, you know, and go forward here with this threat. Thursday's going to be the big day here for big danger. So stay safe out there. We're going to be watching it, updating you, and giving you the latest. But make sure you're preparing here for those hurricane impacts, and expect hurricane watches to be issued here later on your Tuesday for parts of our area.